Good afternoon, everyone. Can I have your attention? We're going to get started with today's meeting. Thank you all. So welcome to today's meeting for the City Park Master Plan, community meeting, Mixing the Gumbo. Please, if you can humor me, how many of you all have been to a community meeting so far? How many of you haven't been to a community meeting so far? Okay, I'll try to give a little quick rundown of what's at your table. So at your table, we'll be doing an activity sheet, and so that's what you see about that large format print on your table. You'll also have an 11 by 17 booklet that has a reference map on the inside. That map will help you orient yourself to the park as we go about today's presentation. It does not feature every single user group or place within the park. It's really just an opportunity for you to orient yourself as we go through each half of the park today. And if you have been at our meetings before, you'll know that we like to start every meeting with a land and labor acknowledgement. So this land and labor acknowledgement behind me has been crafted with the help of Ideas Youth Committee members. If we have any in the room, would you mind just waving your hand real quick? There's a few of them around here. And so we've been engaging with youth and the Ideas Youth Committee members ages 15 through 25. And so they've been helping us to craft this land and labor acknowledgement. And so we'd like to start today's meeting with a quick run through of this acknowledgement. So we honor the ancestral land of the Atacapa Ishak, Caddo, Chitimacha, Choctaw, Homa, Natchez, Tunica, Biloxi, Bayugula, Washa, Chawasha, Chapatulas, Acopalisa, Pointe-aux-Chenes, and other currently unknown indigenous nations who live on and care for this land for over 6,000 years. We also recognize that this land's cultivation, financial growth, and ongoing cultural, historical, and environmental significance was achieved through exploitation and systemic oppression of Black and indigenous people of color. Enslaved African people were forced to clear cypress swamps, construct canals, and cultivate sugarcane on the 14 plantations that occupied City Park's current boundaries. We acknowledge that their uncredited labor, the injustices they endured, and the generational impacts that persist. As we honor this land's past, we pledge to prioritize cultural sensitivity, environmental stewardship, and equitable partnerships with indigenous nations and descendants of enslaved communities in all aspects of planning and engagement for City Park's future. So thank you again for being here today. I'm going to pass it over to Rebecca Dietz, and we'll get started.
Thanks, Chef. Thank y'all for being here tonight. I'm Rebecca Dietz, the President and CEO of City Park Conservancy. There was a session here at 11:30 today, so we learned a lot from that session, the most important being I will hold the microphone close to my mouth. I think that was something we both learned. Yes, okay. I'm here to give just a few updates, a few opening remarks. It makes my heart so happy to see so many people here. It's a testament to how much the community cares about City Park, what a special place it is for all of us. I'd like to thank the City Park board members who are here tonight. Feel free to raise your hand. It's a proud role. Thank you for being here. And all the City Park and planning team members that are here. Everyone should have you all have name tags, so that's not helpful. Along the perimeter, you will see team members who can help you through the activities today. They're raising their hands. They're happy to come to your table and help. This is an exciting day. Oh, I always leave this out. The restrooms are behind me, right around the screen if you need the restroom. It's an exciting day because we are bringing together foundational planning concepts with placemaking concepts, and today you will see conceptual designs. So what you have told us, you will now get to see in a draft plan. This is incredibly exciting for all of us. People have been asking, when do I get to see things? Today is the day. It's also exciting because we believe we've been listening, and what you've told us should be reflected in what you hear and see today. We will be going over a lot of material, so please stay with us. And we will be walking, for those of you that are new, we will be walking through sort of how we got where we are today. Also, a few things to note that came from the earlier meeting. You're going to be asked to engage in an activity today that is kind of ranking how well the plan is meeting core intentions that we established in our first meeting. The last core intention, which I'll point out in a minute, talks about financial feasibility. And it is helpful for this group to know that there are sub-consultants working on the master plan that are not landscape designers. There are traffic engineers, there are a market study analysis being done, feasibility, cost assessment, operations and maintenance is being reviewed. We have, who are some others? Some engineers, hydrology. So yes, operations and maintenance. So there are a lot of sub-consultants working on the team. I hope that helps everyone as you're scoring to know that this isn't just about drawing the landscape. It really is about looking at all of City Park operations. Also, if there's anything in the plan that you see or any area you feel like has not been addressed, please ask questions. We're here to help and answer those questions. And then finally, on the last point, I just want to highlight this land acknowledgement and the pledge we have to prioritize equitable partnerships. This is really important to City Park. It's important that we acknowledge and educate people about City Park's full history, and that is going to be reflected in some of the examples you see today in the plan, but that's not where the work ends. It does not end in a plan. It should not be limited to a plan. This is work that City Park does in partnerships, with community engagement. Telling the park's history is important to us, and it will not be done one time. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay. So this is our pathway, engagement pathway that we started with over the summer in an effort to really expand community engagement, get more people to the table, more people engaging in the plan. We know how many people use and love City Park, and we wanted to make sure everyone had the opportunity, including our young people, to shape its vision for the future. So we've been following a metaphor of making gumbo, and the first thing we did was we gathered all of the input we had received from 2023 through summer of 2024. We gathered it, we put it all together. That's how we came up with the pathway and our first set of core intentions. And then at our meeting in December, Stirring the Rue, we brought those to the community and we asked, are we getting this right? Are we leaving anything out? In that time period, we also did form the Ideas Youth Committee. Shout out to those members who are here today. I see you in the audience. Thank you for coming. And they helped us shape the core intentions as well. So that was an important step. We also laid out what foundational planning is, key elements that we want to address in all 1,300 acres of the park. At our meeting in January, we developed placemaking planning ideas. This is where we ask people to go into a specific area of the park and tell us, what do you want to improve, revive, what would you like to see added? We are very intentional in acknowledging that every space in City Park is special to someone, and we didn't want to disturb people's special places. So instead, we wanted to look at how can we improve where you are? How can we revive things that you maybe remember being here or need a little attention? And then is there anything that you'd like to see in City Park? So where we are today is mixing those two planning concepts together, foundational and placemaking, which turns into conceptual design. And then our last meeting in June, we will take what we learn at this meeting, formalize what will be closer to a final plan, and talk to the community about what programming looks like, the work of our sub-consultants, and hopefully it will feel like nothing is a surprise because you all have been with us the whole time. All right, so where we started, recurring community feedback, enhance and expand nature areas. I'm not going to read all of these because you all can see them and you'll get a good idea of what people have been asking for. Expands athletic fields and sport court type facilities, acknowledge and share City Park's history, expand biking and walking networks, connectivity and safety, address the health of the waterways. This is one we've heard repeatedly, add bathrooms and conveniences, and provide opportunities for visitors of all ages to have fun. This was an interesting one that we really heard from the youth committee, as you can imagine. When young people outgrow playgrounds, they need somewhere else to go and something else to do. So as we met on foundational planning, we asked people to look at the entire 1,300 acres. It was a daunting task, and we said, tell us what we should do in all 1,300 acres. And we heard the same things over and over again, which in my opinion are basic park amenities, things we should do whether we have a master plan or not, which is provide conveniences, restrooms, shade, working water fountains, signage, good wayfinding. So these are things, when we heard them over and over again, we now categorize them as the givens. So anything we do in this plan, you can assume these items will be addressed where necessary. That way people could dream a little bit more. Once we told them we will have more bathrooms. Yes, we will fix the water fountains. Once we say that, people think, oh, okay, well, maybe I want something else then. These were the core intentions that we put together in the foundational planning meetings. Again, we started with 4. We went to the community and said, did we get this right? And they added 2 more. The kids added fun. No surprise there. Thank you for that. And the community asked us to please consider our budget, revenue opportunities, and affordability. What I heard from that was, please don't show us things that you have no intention of building or being able to afford to take care of, and please don't ticket everything in the park. So we're looking at that. This is back to the placemaking, our last meeting where we asked people what they'd like to improve, revive, or add. And when you marry these together, which is what we're doing today, core intentions, placemaking, it should result in a plan that provides integrated solutions. And this is kind of a fancy, sorry friends, it's a fancy way to say we should invest in things that do more than one thing. And that's just smart park management. We shouldn't build a parking lot that only serves one building. If we're going to build parking lots and invest money in that, they should serve many park users and many opportunities in the park. So what you'll see today, hopefully, is a lot of integrated planning solutions. I hope now that I've pointed it out, you'll notice them. And now Gulliver's going to come up and walk you through the areas of the park we're going to talk about today. Again, we're halving the activities, so we'll talk to you for a little bit, ask you to do an activity, talk to you a little bit more, and another activity. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. You don't have to give me that. It's so funny. Hi, everyone. Gulliver from Michael Van Valkenburg Associates. Great to be here. It's a beautiful day in New Orleans. One thing I have to say is thank you for all this feedback, for you who have already contributed, and for you who are new here today and going to offer feedback. Thank you in advance. We've worked in other parts of the country and other parks, and one thing I have to say is distinct is we get a lot of feedback on this project. It's amazing. It allows us to not get beyond, yes, you need a field. We get into more nuanced ideas about what's so precious for you about this place. So keep it coming, and thank you. The Uber driver offered me something really smart about the festival grounds today, and in fact, any time we mention City Park, we get some advice and we get some insight into what this place means. So we get it, and we're so happy to be dreaming about this with you all. So this is an extremely large park, as you know, and so we've put this into 6 pieces to be able to show you some of that integrated planning that Rebecca was talking about. And the way this is going to look, as she mentioned, is we're going to divide it in half, and I will go into the first 3 areas that are north of 610, walk through how we've taken the input from the community and like studying all these things about the physical conditions of the site, and try to put it out there as some ideas for integrated planning that we want to get further feedback from you all. So let's start. Looking north of 610. This is, and when you see a slide like this, it's just sampling a few of the hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of comments that we've received, and we've just selected some that really were, repeated or said in different ways, and we are really trying to respond to. So everyone, talks about, just with lovingly, about the nature that exists in the park, because it is, not everywhere in the city. This is a very special and large, generous amount of it located in the middle. It is a bit anemic on some of the visitor support services. A lot of people sometimes wonder, where does the park end? How do I know that I'm in the park? And how I know I'm invited to enjoy and explore this? Some of that could be, some of the givens, signage, restrooms, all that. But also just more activities that might be family-friendly opportunities. And then people really are watching what's happening to the landscape itself. When trees fall down, I'm sure the CPC hears about that, and there's a lot of commentary about people's awareness of what's exists today and what's kind of the condition of it. So they really see the opportunity of how maintenance is important to a park like this, and we were going to want to respond to that. So bringing in more types of native plants has been a frequent comment, as well as just more trails. Constantly hearing that, which is great. So when you see a slide like this is our kind of executive summary, section by section, in those categories that we mentioned before, and improve, revive, and add. Reviving things that maybe have been forgotten in the park, that there's a lot of memory in the community here. We are given all sorts of ideas like I remember when, and we could think about that in part of this planning. Or places that are loved, how can we improve those? And then looking outside the park, looking at your city, looking at your community and saying, hey, there's an opportunity here in this park to bring more people into the park and to enjoy. Okay, so hovering over the northern part of the park, looking south, you can see Nursery Island, Katuri Forest, Scout Island, Wisner Track. So these are all really important touchstones of people's impression of nature in the park here at City Park. But we have Harrison and Diagonal meeting here, and we have an idea about how to try to connect these together and build a little more glue, both in terms of planting and trail infrastructure, that allows us to be thought of as one space, one big, tremendous natural resource for City Park. So 165 acres that you don't have to cross a road, or if you do cross a road at one moment on Harrison, it's a pedestrian passage over the road so that you can just keep going. Longer runs, longer walks. We're just exploring. So we're really excited about this idea, and we have ideas we're hanging off of this structural change. Okay, so hopefully that helps your orientation. I know you have maps in front of you, and we just will ask questions if you get confused about the orientation. We just want to make this large enough so you can see what's going on. So starting with Scout Island, there's an old field that has kind of gone to seed. We think this is a tremendous opportunity to bring back a landscape type that just does not exist in the city and is very hard to find in Louisiana, the Cajun Prairie. It's very special, and it has like a tremendous opportunity to anchor education programs, and you have all the pollinators and all sorts of habitat potential by doing something like this. So that's just an idea of an improve, noted in orange, revive. And then we have talked a lot about the lagoons. This is a man-made system. It's really part of the soul of this park, is making coming up with this waterway system to punctuate and choreograph some amazing experiences in the park today. We want to support that and grow the access to that, and it's just really where the life of the park, including the habitat, all anchor onto. Wet meadows, this is again, we want to, in terms of an investment into the park that both creates more entertaining landscapes, more vibrant experiences to walk through. It also helps increase the kind of blue infrastructure role of this park to absorb water, stormwater, which is always helping the city around it. Cypress groves, this was all cypress forest originally, continue to bring that back in here. It's a fundamental part of this landscape that once existed here, but it's also quite beautiful, and it does so well with stability, holding onto sediments that wash away, and just has a great, wonderful character to contrast the oaks, which of course on the slightly higher ground all over the park, you see a tremendous community of oaks especially in this case along Harrison and the higher ground of Diagonal. And then we know from looking at old records that before the WPA project, there were pine isles. There were little sand deposits that were, ancient formations that were here that can support pine savanna. So that is a possibility to bring this here. So the whole idea is to really take that 165 acres and put together a wonderful tapestry of native Louisiana landscapes for people to explore. We also have the idea of being able to use this incredible landscape to insert new activities. Perhaps on the Board Mountain, we could think about something that after going up the full 35 feet, we could slide down. That's a lot of elevation here, right? That could be fun. We do think, especially on that inner contained lagoon between Scout Island and Diagonal, which is so beautifully precious, that maybe that's a great opportunity also to invite nature play, something where people can bring their kids to play in the woods in a way that's not just touching plastic like many playgrounds are today. We also think that high ground, by pulling back Diagonal and not connecting with Harrison, you're freeing a whole collection of oaks that are just quite beautiful. And instead of being trapped in the middle of a bunch of roadways, we now can create a nice discovery play area that's full of shade. And of course, I'll keep hitting this theme again and again, access to the water, new crossings, and leveraging that to make new places to fish, boat, activities like the boarding there. And then all of this we want to think about how it meets these edges. On all these edges, thinking about how we can make a safer crossing at Harrison, which right now is kind of hazardous for crossing the road, fix that, and then also make something across the way that just allows you to know right away, that's for me, that's a park. This is an invitation to come in. And that would be all around this area to kind of stitch this together. The thing we've also heard about is we want lots of trails, but not just one type of trail. Some people want to have a nice, smooth, wide trail to bike on. Others want to feel like they're having their off-road adventure and kind of move through the space that's kind of a rough and tumble landscape. Others want to be able to explore the wetter landscapes that often have these wonderful ephemeral and emergent plantings. Okay, zooming in, we talked a bit about we want to do something at the end of Diagonal to kind of anchor this whole new natural area as one big destination. But within that, we think that having a moment that kind of cinches it all together and creates a little bit of activity could be beneficial for two reasons. On the day-to-day, if you're walking through on a hot day through this very large area of new landscape, you need a bathroom, some water, or if you're meeting a friend to go on a walk, we create a destination at here that can be just a kind of place to get out of the sun and in the shade, and that could be really beneficial. We also see it as an opportunity to be a central location to stitch together all destinations from the canal side to the bayou side, north and south as well, to be able to, if you just had an hour visiting City Park, you could come to this location, supported by a lot of parking lots here that we're showing on the plan here, to just take a little walk in that circle where you're seeing all of those different landscape types in just a half an hour, just a little walk and be able to see all the things that the park could offer in this nature area. Then, just to build on that idea a little bit more, all the conveniences that we want to try to do on each one of these additions in the park, maybe we could have a lot of indoor-outdoor structures that provide shade, provide little places for people to meet. Maybe you could actually program it to have events here. Not crazy, not a convention center. Just kind of a small community meeting, clubs, maybe a camp for kids to explore the nature. There could be a lot of great opportunities with this. Okay, so that's one of three sections, and there's a lot here, but bear with me. The second section here is that kind of understood as the athletic complex, and it also includes the quad in this view. We hear, this is such an important part of the lifeblood of City Park. This is a place where people come from really afar to come use these facilities. but it is a little bit of a contained area, and we want to stitch it into the rest of the park. So we want to be able to upgrade the facility to continue to offer that incredible service to the city at large, but also expand that. We know that the demand for that's increasing, and so we want to be able to, we've heard from the community about how can you help us with that. Again, Marconi, which does deliver people here, is also a little bit of the problem, that people are concerned about some of the safety issues related to having traffic move through the middle of this place that can sometimes just be loaded with kids and families. Additionally, what else could you do to support when this is full of people? Because right now it doesn't have maybe enough to support that population, and in terms of just conveniences of restrooms and water and such. So again, we're organizing all those comments into this kind of executive summary of things we want to improve, revive, and add. And as we zoom in, we're going to take a moment just to dial into this safety issue along Marconi. You see here this going through the middle of the athletic complex, and that we have a road called Magnolia that follows the lagoon that has been interrupted by the construction of some tennis courts in the past. And our proposal is we're going to replace a few of the tennis courts that would be displaced by this, but bring continuity to this road, which is a slow traffic controlled road. We're just adding that little bit of section to allow people to drive at a slower pace to get to a series of new parking lots that allow for greater capacity and are better distributed. This opens the opportunity to improve the safety along movement in Marconi, and this is what we're thinking. This is the view today, 4 travel lanes, which you all know, if the road feels wide, you feel a little more comfortable going faster. It's just the psychology of driving, right? So if we can think about adding a parking lane and then a single travel lane, north and south, we earn a little bit of feet to give back to the trees and some of the drainage issues, and create an opportunity to create slower traffic speeds and some crossings. Now the parking would go away as you approach an intersection to allow for left turn lanes to not create jams in that transportation issue. If we could do that, I think that could offer an opportunity, but we also think that it's super critical to redistribute circulation within the park along Magnolia, and be able to have convenient parking spaces offered within the park, and not having people always going outside the park, driving on Magnolia and coming back in. That doesn't help the issue. Now, in terms of big park field improvements, the northernmost park called Field 18, I believe right now, turning that into a multi-use field so that could be programmed. What we're hearing is that there's a lot of different opportunities, rugby, soccer, you have a couple multi-use fields mixed in with things that are designated soccer fields, and you can get a lot more use value out of this place. On the quad, you have 4 baseball, softball fields, and the way it's used today is not like that. There's all sorts of things going on there, and we want to recalibrate that to the way it's used today. We also have heard about adding in some court sports, and we think this is a great location to build on this. It could be hard courts sports like pickleball or whatnot, or it can be volleyball. Maybe a beach volleyball would be something people would really enjoy here. So there's an existing building here that is not for the public currently, but we think that we could refurbish this because it's so conveniently located in the middle of all this athletics activity for concessions and restrooms. So this is just a small investment to tweak the use of that building to be public, and then you could imagine having seating that looks out over the lagoons, paired with some new crossings to the lagoons. Suddenly now, even if you're on Scout Island, which is kind of a dead end to get there, you now have a way to get to a bathroom, shade, and just see other people in the park, walk on the other side of the lagoon. And that's really the idea here, is right now this feels a bit like a moat between athletics and then this natural area. And now we could offer all sorts of spaces where we see those different activities, people enjoying the natural park, but also people actively using the rec. And then again, often, I mean, in my experience, and I think I've talked to a lot of people in the community, this is a family affair to go see someone who's participating in soccer or some other sport. And sometimes you bring the younger kids, and they don't have a lot to do, right? They're not necessarily interested in their brother or sister's game. So we want to think about bringing in and peppering in some play areas along the way to give them something to do and make this just a more animated space. Then when it's not game times, this is also an attractive asset for the general public. Okay, last section, and then we get to our activity. This is the section that straddles 610. This is one of those really big challenges that we've been focused on since the beginning. And we've heard a lot about a lot of concern about how can we make this better to actually really connect and have the energy of the park go north. What else can we do to upgrade Pan Am? How can we provide all sorts of new offerings? And then south of the area here, we've heard specific questions about repurposing the maintenance corral. Lots of ideas. Should there be a museum about the history of the park itself? Could it be programmed differently? Which we heard some great input from the Ideas Youth Committee. Okay, again, a lot of ideas being packed into this area because it's really quite underutilized because I understand it. It's next to a highway and a rail line. It's not the highest and most immediately attractive space, but there's a lot of space there, and we could take advantage of this. Okay, so the first area, just south of the rail track and north of Palm Drive, is a really big area. I have not seen it used at all. And it's some really great, really large live oaks in this area, and we think this could be a great place to add something for a demographic that that is not well served in the park right now, which is teenagers and young adults, right? They've gotten past the amusement park. They're ready for something else. We've done a few of these wheel parks in the country, and it's like wildfire right now. People are so interested in all these new forms of recreation. So this is scooters, bikes, BMXs, skateboards can all use a similar track. And it's a lot of fun to watch, actually, because there's a high risk reward in these activities, and people really enjoy it. So there's a bunch of live oaks here. We thought this would also be the opportunity to create decks, which is often wet from just a little bit of wet weather, and you can't really walk around those trees. We've done many decks around root zones of big trees like this, and it's an amazing investment because you have a space to meet that's got shade, and we think in the midst of this new activity, you could have a great place to observe that activity and meet friends, and we just think this would be a great hangout space. The west side of the little lake there, we think that a cooling garden, again, thinking about the track being in this area, now all these new courts and wheel park kind of sports, people will get hot. We think that could be a great opportunity to give people some relief to the heat. And we think also at a younger age, we could have outdoor classrooms, a space to do some programming. And really, you have the Children's Museum on the other side of the lake, but it kind of cuts you off from the lake. So this is important to leverage all this great live oak shade in this area. And the cinching this all together is the maintenance corral. It's a tremendous opportunity, and I still really thank the Ideas Youth Committee for really talking about needing an opportunity for, new opportunities for programming. If we restored the maintenance corral, including the whole courtyard aspect of it, this would be a nice protected space to do things you can't do in a lawn, right? So whether it's boat building that you could then launch into the little lake, or dance classes, or junior basketball, you all will have the right ideas about how to use it, but this could be a protected space that could be amazing for doing that kind of specialized programming. Okay, then looking at the transition, which needs just a physical transformation that's exciting, so it also tells people there's more. You can keep going and explore more of City Park from this location. It will be really helpful to have activity, which is everything we just described to the south, and then to the north, it gets a little quieter if you cross through there today, right? It feels like there's just a service road. We do have the pioneers of this space, GrowDat, who is, again, part of this younger generation trying to do something with this space, which is, we have to applaud. We also have the Pan Am field, which is a bit tucked in the corner, but it's just not, there could be more. We could build on the work that these facilities are doing. So the first thing was, how could we cure this sense of being next to a highway and just, that service road, Zachary Taylor, how could we change that a bit? So we're thinking about taking a lot of the cut from opening up the passage underneath the highway, which feels very much like a mouse hole. And we've studied this. We know it's possible to really open that up, give you more sight lines, and look into the landscape and feel a lot more comfortable going through there. So some of that cut can be used, and then further cuts for the water garden and infrastructure that we're proposing here at this point, where all the lagoons in the north overflow into this moment and build the capacity. Then we use that fill to build little bits of hill that starts to insulate from the noise coming from the highway at that location. Hills are very good for buffering that, and right at this location, the highway is right at grade. It's very loud. Then we want to go even further and let's invite people to another moment like Laborde Mountain, maybe not that tall, to just look out over and see the incredible scale of this park and the lagoon systems. It's really quite wonderful to watch. So we call it Hangout Hill because it's just a place to right away to kind of climb up and feel like you have your own little clubhouse up there. We've looked at to the east of GrowDat to put a parking garden. We call it a parking garden because it's being more responsible about how we do parking, treating the runoff. There's a depressional area that keys into both GrowDat and this site, and that would be a way to kind of collect the runoff from the parking areas, also have covered parking spaces and possibly solar power to kind of use to tie into the rest of this project to make a very responsible investment. This would also support a new practice field adjacent to Pan Am. This could really help maximize the use and activity around Pan Am. You invite people for competitions, they have a practice field, marching band practices, what have you. Have it then refurbish the old golf clubhouse in this location, which again is just sitting there locked up, used as storage, could be better used to facilitate, again, a touch point for bathrooms, water, maybe some workout rooms to support the kind of athletics program at this area, and then add more activity. Why not take this corner that's kind of neither here nor there, use this increased parking to make this really a nice activity hub within the park. One is the sport courts we could add into this, and then take advantage of the Wisner flyover. It's the one moment in the park where you have direct access from the park to Bayou St. John. So we're proposing a boat launch in this location, and then further, a walkway at the water's edge that would be a fork that connects into the Bayou St. John multi-use trail all the way up north. If you add that all together, the whole idea of the challenge of a highway and a railway blocking the connection of north and south precincts of the park is using activity to bridge across here. It will feel more inviting. It'll be animated. There'll be more destinations to bring people here. And we think that could be a real cure for the challenge of this infrastructure obstacle. Thank you. That was a lot. I'm really excited to hear what you have to tell us. Thank you.
Alrighty, so yes, lots of ideas presented for that, but when you have 1,300 acres, there's gonna be a lot to talk about. So, now that we've explained ourselves, we would love to hear back from y'all. So I'm gonna walk y'all through the activity we have today, and we're gonna do this activity twice, okay? So we just covered the lakeside half of the park, mostly above 610, and then we're gonna do the other side of it. But first things first, you'll see in the middle of your table, you have a big old map. So what I would suggest y'all do with your first minute or so, kind of get your bearings. Every single thing that Gulliver just walked through has a picture, has its label, has a note on the map. Now, you might be looking at it in a way that you're not used to, so definitely take a moment, just see where everything is, figure out where you are, and then we can start the conversation. Also, every one of those things still has those colors, so things that are improve are blue, revive is orange, add is pink. So we have two main buckets we want to ask you guys about, and those are opportunities and successes. Okay, so opportunities, we feel like, what are some things that we have opportunities to improve out of these ideas? What are some things that maybe could use a little bit of an update or a little bit of a tweak? Okay, that's what we want to hear. So that's all in the seasoning cabinet, all right? So that's where you're putting those ideas down. So you're tasting your gumbo, it's like, nah, needs a little more spice, all right? So that's what opportunities is. Then we have successes. This is very important. What did we get right with this? If you see an idea that you absolutely love that needs to be in this master plan, we would love for you to write that down in successes so that we don't touch it again, okay? We got that. So I want to reiterate, though, writing those ideas down is going to be very, very important. If you don't write it down, we won't see it, and it won't go into the master plan because we can't hear everybody talking. So please, 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 I can't reiterate that enough. Please write it down. How you write it down, no rules. You can write it directly on the paper in the box. You can write it on a Post-it note, slap it on there. If you want to write something directly on the map, you can write a Post-it note and put the note directly on the map. We will read everything. We will document everything, okay? So opportunities, updates, little tweaks, successes, what's really rocking and rolling, what did we get right? Now, inside your packet, you have a sheet, and that'll be the second part. So the first part, we want you to brainstorm with your group, discuss things that are working, discuss different ideas, but then after you're done with that, we're going to ask you to rate how successful we accomplished these 6 core intentions. Because remember, we are mixing the gumbo. So these are kind of the goals that we want to achieve throughout the entire park. So 1 is not successful at all. 5 is very, very successful. So kind of keep those 6 intentions in your head the whole time we were discussing. But at the end of it, we would like each individual person give us your rankings for how we did. So kind of put another way, for those 6 intentions, we have these 6 questions that you could be considering the whole time. So, does this area feel welcoming and unified? Is it safe, accessible, and convenient? How does it support landscape health and biodiversity? How does it support the park's history and cultural uses? How can this area be fun, healthy, and enriching for all ages? And finally, is it financially sustainable and affordable? Now, I want to reiterate what Rebecca said earlier, is that if you don't feel like you can rank that last one because you haven't seen all of the information from all of the consultants that we are still working with, absolutely feel free to leave that intention blank. But if you feel like you have a good grasp of it, absolutely throw your ranking down, okay? So we're going to have about 20 minutes to work on this first half, and then we'll reconvene, go over the Riverside portion, and do it all again. If you have any questions, raise your hand. One of us will come answer it, okay? All right, let's get going, guys. Alrighty, we have about 5 more minutes for this half, and then we'll talk about the next half. 5 more minutes. All right, final minute. Jot down those last ideas. take your own sheet and start ranking those 6 core intentions. 1 more minute, and then we'll reconvene. So take the time right now. 1 through 5. How well did we hit the mark with our 6 intentions? So only the top section. Alrighty, if I could have everybody's attention again. Up here, we're going to get started with the next section. If I could have everybody's attention, we'll get started on the next section so that we can all get home on time. Right now, what I'd like every table to do is grab the sheet that's underneath the one that they just used and put it on top. We're going to talk about the south side, the river side of the park. This one's going to go a little bit quicker because there's already a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, take that bottom sheet, do your best, and put it right on top. Alrighty, thank y'all so much. We're gonna go through 3 more sections, and then we'll do this whole process again, and then we'll make it happen.
Okay. Hey, folks, we've only got 30 minutes left, and we want to get you focused on the next. Hello. We need you to help us focus on the next exercise. I'm so sorry to cut off your conversations. Thank you. All right. Thanks again for your attention. I know the last one was like a sprint through a lot of information. This will be more like a jog. So if we can now focus our attention looking south to the next 3 areas. Yes, so 4, 5, and 6 on the plan here. Okay, Zone 4. This is the area by Tad Gormley and the Roosevelt Mall. And so again, just to remind everyone, these are where we're just selecting some of the community's input that we've recorded and help guide us in trying to develop a draft plan. Things here are a whole collection of ideas about how to just put more things to do in this area, just to, in a way to summarize it. Beer gardens, better concessions, that, there's lovely, lovely trees in this area, but other than the track is like a really important piece of activity in this area, but other than that, there's not a tremendous amount of activity. There's a lot of roads, and so people were putting out a lot of ideas of like how you could expand food offerings, how could we revive and engage Pop Fountain more, farmers markets, and then just more biking networks, because right now this is very vehicle dominated. Again, the summary of improve, revive, and add. All right, so zooming in here, and we have Marconi there at the top, which is, as you all know, an important bike trail along that edge. And just to note, there's some pieces of some roads on the other side of this area that are, I guess you could be kind and call it bike friendly. Okay, so one of the ideas here is how could we build on this more and just find more ways to get into the park from these edges? There's so much area here that's just not taken advantage of. We have Palm, Roosevelt, and Stadium Drive there that are all roads. And we want to convert a lot of that into places for bikes and multi-use trails. You'll also notice some ideas such as finding a way to connect the central lawn, the Great Lawn, and pass between the amusement park and the Botanic Garden, just to help. Otherwise, you have to go a long way in either direction to get around to this area. And it's kind of creates a shadow effect where you don't have a lot of activity. So the purpose of this is just more ways with bikes and pedestrian pathways to feel like you're invited into this area, and then use that to anchor more activities. So with Tad Gormley itself, that's right off the bat, we need to deal with some issues. You're no longer allowed to park directly underneath the undercroft of the stadium for homeland security issues. That's very technical, but it is actually an opportunity to think about parking around the edge of this. That could be not just for parking for events, but ways to allow people to come into the park and have a radial set of paths from outside the fence of Tad Gormley to connect to all of these areas. We could pair that with a concession garden to the south that could be certainly useful for when there are events in the stadium, but also next to the amusement park, an expanded offering of food and drinks in the park. And then this quite underutilized baseball field that's kind of in that shadow behind the service-dominated area behind the amusement park and the Botanic Garden. If we make a passage there, seemed like a great location to put the amphitheater that many, many people have brought up in the conversations with the community, a place where the community can run the programming a little bit more. And I think putting that in the center of the park and animating this part of the park would be fantastic. Roosevelt Mall. We want to put a little bit of a road diet on that, just give back some pedestrian space, including a path going down that median that could take advantage of all that wonderful shade. This could also be a wonderful art trail for temporary art exhibitions, and even if you're just passing through, going from south of the amusement park through to north of the park, or north of 610, you'd be passing through this space now with the convenience of new bike trails, and you could see what's going on. The mall itself would also become, as you suggested, a great opportunity, dialing back the street to have fairs, art fairs, food trucks. So north of the mall is an opportunity to again, take advantage of a space that it just isn't used a whole lot. Flexible lawns are something that we were thinking would be really helpful for just pickup games and whatnot. Making a better facility around the track, which is just a hub of activity, and we could really support that more. It is a bit tired. It's been used and loved to death, so we need to support that and create some new amenities for that kind of field of recreation, but also maybe some better spaces for being a spectator or waiting for your friend to finish their event. And then this might seem less connected, but it is actually, for thinking about what's coming off of Marconi and how you can move from Marconi into the park. Pop's Fountain is surrounded by a fence. It's certainly wonderful for a wedding, but we think that we could add more gates and redevelop the gardens there to become more of a public amenity, that we open the gates during the day and allow people to come in there and enjoy what could be a wonderful garden space, maybe a whole series of garden spaces, all hovering around a beautiful piece of the history of the park. And then another kind of quirk, and something we've directly heard, is how to take advantage of that space underneath the highway. And we've actually gotten a lot of requests for putting an activity that might actually work, workout pods, and you see this all over cities, places that are, we have to improve the sight lines into that area, which are all possible. But just having people doing things is so important in this medicine to make the park feel inviting and active. Zone 5. This is, I guess, referred to often as the festival grounds because it has a history of accommodating a lot of festivals. This, we had a lot less input about programs to add in this area, but very much a lot of commentary about the landscape itself. And it stems partially from a couple, I guess, festivals where there was a lot of wet ground and people didn't love that. And actually the trees didn't love that either because trampling the wet soils actually impacts the health of those oaks. So how could we make this work better? I think that was kind of one of the take-homes for this commentary here. And so we're really just trying to improve this area, that there's a lot of potential to enhance the ability to use this for festival grounds or just as open, flexible lawns, but to also deal with all that wet. So again, we're thinking about how to reshape lawn rooms that just make the space more figured, more of a spatial enclosure that feels like not just a sprawling lawn that gets mowed, but then also that little track that people use every day for exercise and just enjoyment becomes a lot more interesting because we want to punctuate that with is digging out some of these lower areas that are getting wet and making more out of the wet areas. Have them sort of create a lot of energy for these marsh gardens, which you can enter through boardwalks, but then anything where we're cutting to increase the kind of blue infrastructure, rain garden kind of aspect of the park, which is, again, serving the city at large, we can use some of that cut and use it as fill to elevate the lawns so they don't get wet in wet weather events. It's really a simple idea of just making the higher ground higher and the lower ground lower and let them be what they want to be. We also heard a great deal about if you're going to continue to try to have big events or festivals, that you need to have at least one of them to be thought out a little bit more in terms of where you park the vehicles, where you do your setups, maybe so it doesn't impact that track for people. You know, we've heard actually this was the Uber driver's comment, that this track that people use gets really impacted if you spend several weeks closing it down for a festival. So that's interesting input, and we've tried to record that here in this corner where it's very adjacent to the maintenance area and back of house. And then in general, we're just trying to take a little bit less effort on just mowing, and let some of just focus on the lawns that are flatter, that people can use for programmed events, or just use, again, pickup games when it's not event time. And then have areas where you get immersed in new plantings. And we, of course, want to work very carefully to think about our oak savanna population in the park. And this is just a park-wide issue, but this is a great place to talk about it. Working with our ecologists and our experts, consultants, and all of the park maintenance staff are very passionate about this issue as well. That mowing around the bases of these trees isn't always great. These are often inundation zones where water comes and feeds their root areas, and then when you drive vehicles for mowing over it, that's not helping. And we just think that we can start to think about how to make this population healthier for the older trees, but then also we just need more oak trees. There we have on the left you see kind of a picture of what the park is now in terms of all of the trees are quite old and magnificent, but if we want that for future generations, we need what's on the right, which is a healthier demographic of oak landscape where there's a lot more younger trees. So planting more oaks is important for the future generations to have this city park experience. Last zone. Thank you for your patience. It's also, in my mind, kind of the first zone because this is the gateway to what I think of as City Park, this iconic landscape around the Bayou Metairie, and also where most people tend to park. So there's a lot of vehicle infrastructure here. There's actually just a lot jammed into this part of the park that we want to try to open up and create some opportunities. Again, the comments from the community we're organizing into these ideas. And the first thing is, how can we take away some of this road infrastructure? We think it's entirely possible to remove some of this roadway. I mean, I have been on Dreyfus and watched people drive at 30 miles an hour through a park. That's too fast. It's, we're racing to get beignets, I guess. I don't know. Beignet emergency. So what could we do? How could we still preserve people needing to get to Café du Monde and the Botanic Garden, this kind of central landing point in the park, but not rely on so much asphalt roadway? Instead, why don't we encourage more bike trails? There's Lafitte Greenway is close by. There's all sorts of bike trails that are just a tiny bit from being fully connected into this part of the park. We could really do our work to enable that and give people who are on bikes an option that's more than just riding up Marconi, right? We could start to connect. You could bike through the park and see many, many things, and that's a really powerful idea. Bikes are like the pioneers of city environments, honestly. It's amazing if you look at the history of how much it allows people just because they can move and see so much of a park faster. So this new path, especially the one that's going from west to east here, would be avoiding the pinch point, I call it, around Café du Monde and the Sculpture Garden. And it would create two crossings of the bayou that are actually accessible. All those bridges are wonderfully quirky and lovely pieces of history, but they're just not convenient for if you have any mobility issues at all. So this multi-use trail and would be also opening the door for people to just explore this this beautiful part of the park more conveniently. So Pigeon Island is this, again, wonderful vestige of the original landscape in this area, but it has a little structure on it called the pigeonniere where they used to raise pigeons. That's fallen in a bit disrepair, but we think we could be part of bridging what's everything to the east to the west in terms of making an accessible crossing instead of going through that pinch point. So people could just walk along that shoreline along the bayou. And we think that could be a wonderful little miniature island for kids for nature play, because this environment is wonderful and it should be a place where a setting for all sorts of programs. Okay, so then this central moment of being able to arrive at City Park, we want to also solve a little bit of the problems we see around Café du Monde, which is just cars are parked in every direction, and it's kind of, there's buses, and there's all sorts of unloading going on there. And if we could use this area between the sculpture garden and that little police building on the side of that large central parking lot, we can make a really large arrival landscape and a big lay-by, so all those buses can go there, unload people, and provide a lot of orientation to the park experience. On the Great Lawn, which is important to have this in every park, a big flat lawn where programming can happen at its front door. It's an important civic space. You have that lovely peristyle addressing it. But on the edge with the mini golf, perhaps we could add a building that offers some outdoor cafe and food service that's really in support of all the programming for a lawn space like that. Okay, and this is a really exciting part of this new entry experience we're imagining on the southwest corner of the park, which right now is just a whole bunch of roads. It's next to a road at Orleans, but inside, just like 20, 30 feet from that, are more roads. And we're just trying to pull that away and create a pedestrian space. A pedestrian space that speaks of a very clear invitation to come into the park for the rest of the city. So we imagine this plaza, but what's really fun, what really animates it and kind of reaches out and says, come on in, is this idea of a civic water feature. A plaza that just has a skim of water that does some amazing things. And if you've seen, there are a few of these things in the world, and they're all breathtaking. So take off your shoes and walk through this water with a friend, cool down. Kids have some water play, spray things that entertain kids, and you hear kids. It's big enough that you just see the whole collage of people in the city coming here to cool down. It's kind of the idea of water play for all, and it's right there at the front door of the park, inviting them in. We think this location is particularly resonant for an idea like this because for 30 years, it was a pool, which by name was public, but it wasn't really open to all. So the racial integration legislation of the time unfortunately created the result where this was filled in and has been left as a field for over 60 years. It just seems like a shame. This is at the front door of the park. And maybe it's the time to bring back something that really says, please come to Central Park. Sorry, God, I'm so sorry. City Park, the Central Park of New Orleans. But come on in and just like enjoy it 24/7, watch the lights be reflected in this mirror pool, and invite the whole city in. And I think it could be a wonderful message for City Park. And I hope you enjoyed this second part of running through all of these ideas. We really appreciate your feedback. Let's go on to keep going and hear some more thoughts from you all. Thank you very much.
All righty, thank you, everybody. So same exact thing, opportunities, successes, core intentions. We're just going to run it back. Same exact thing, but now we're focused on this second half, all right? So we got about 15 more minutes. We might go a little past 8 o'clock so we get some good conversations. Yeah, let's get to it.
All right, everyone. I know y'all are deep in discussion right now. We have about 5 more minutes. We've run a little bit over tonight, but I appreciate y'all for hanging in with us. So please, if you haven't had a chance to start your rankings, take out that 8.5 by 11 sheet and think about your rankings for the south side of the park. Thank you. Alrighty, this is my last time coming on the mic today, so please, if you haven't had a chance to fill out your 8.5 by 11, please do so now. This will be the end of today's meeting. We really appreciate you all for coming. Before you leave to head home for your favorite TV show or whatever extra dinner you have, please make sure you fill out the 8.5 by 11. There's some questions on the back that allow us to figure out how we can improve during the next meeting. So please fill that out and leave it with you before you leave today. The people giving testimonials will still be available for the next couple minutes. So if you're lingering around for the rest of the meeting, please do so. Stop by and say hello. Once again, appreciate you all for coming out, and thank you.